What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the NBA Needs to Hurry Up and Start because I am running out of things to talk about. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder because I believe that they are the most perfect team heading into this upcoming season. Obviously, championship aspirations with this team coming off the second round loss to the Dallas Mavericks. This team is better. The players who were on this team previously are going to come in better next season. I'm looking at SGA, both Jalen Williams is, Lou Dort. We're going to be talking about the additions of Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso as well. But before we get into all of that, there is a large piece of news that we have to discuss that dropped this morning. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reported that he is stepping down as NBA reporter and retiring from the news industry entirely. He is accepting a role to be the general manager of the St. Bonaventure men's basketball team. This is a really devastating loss for sports journalism, for NBA journalism. Woj was really the gold standard for newsbreakers, reporters, journalists, whatever you want to label him as. He did the job perfectly. There was always those debates between him and Shams Charania, who was the premier reporter, but it really was no contest, especially over the last couple of seasons, that it was Woj. He may not have always been first to the story, but he was first with all of the details and all of the correct details, which is what matters when you're breaking news. But when you're talking about sports trades, you really need the whole picture to properly understand and to properly grade and analyze the trade. And Woj always did that. Of course, he was first when it came to a lot of the major signings. There was the trade with Paul George back in 2019. There was, of course, his infamous clean sweep trade with my Brooklyn Nets. There really was any notable piece of news in the NBA realm had Woj's name attached to it. Additionally, he had several non-basketball moments that really stood out to fans, namely the incident with Josh Hawley when he told Josh Hawley to go fuck himself over email. That was, during the whole NBA bowing down to China type thing. Also, him coming to the defense of Bronny James after the draft when folks were talking about nepotism, and Woj called it how it was, said, hey, there's nepotism all throughout the NBA. I don't want to hear it now that Bronny James is playing with his dad, Bronny James, who, by the way, got drafted 55th overall. So shout out to Woj. There's going to be a massive space missing. I'm curious to see who's going to fill that role. I'm thinking it's going to be either Brian Windhorst or maybe Dave McMenamin. It's going to be bittersweet not being able to see Woj bombs being dropped, not, all of the memes happening whenever there's inevitably a massive trade around the All-Star break. But enough of that. Congratulations to Woj. I hope that he enjoys this next chapter of his life. And now, after 5 minutes, we are finally going to talk about what I wanted to talk about, and that is the Oklahoma City Thunder. To me, Oklahoma City had the best offseason, and it's because when you're a general manager, when you're a team builder, your offseason is graded upon how well you build on this team from last year, any team from last year. You have to look at the roster, look at the metrics, assess what needs to be fixed, and go out and do that. Sam Presti did that better than anyone else, I believe, and it's even more impressive when you consider how he was able to bring in high caliber talent and elite role players to fill these holes. When you go back and you look at the Thunder of last year, undeniably a great team led by Shea Gilgeous Alexander, but there were some glaring holes, namely the center position backing up Chet Holmgren, and of course their rebounding was disastrous. That was largely the result of how this roster was built. It is very wing heavy, which is what you need in today's NBA. I'm thinking of Lou Dort, SGA, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe. Not the biggest roster. And when you get into the postseason, you do need that added physicality. You do need that size, particularly on the glass. This team was 27th in total rebounding this past season. So what do? Isaiah Hartenstein is one of the premier free agents hitting the market this summer. You go out and you throw him whatever you feel is necessary to poach him from the New York Knicks. In this case, it was, I think, like $91 million. It averaged out to about $30 million per year. But this is a tremendous addition for them. Not only is Hartenstein one of the best per minute rebounders in the NBA, particularly on the offensive glass, he made great strides as a playmaker this past season. Nothing otherworldly, but being able to give that short roll pass out of the pick and roll and have your big play make around the free throw line is huge. There is, of course, his ability to finish in the paint, that little floater he added that was so lethal throughout all of the Knicks games last season and into the postseason. It's not the most mobile big, but he still produces well enough on that end as to where he's not a liability. I do think that Chet is probably going to be the go-to defensive option for them, but Hartenstein, he's big enough. He's mobile enough. He is good enough to play a sizable role with this team. Obviously, if you didn't think that, you wouldn't shell out $90 million for him. But that was a tremendous grade for the Thunder. I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but currently their odds to win the championship are plus 900, which is, I believe, the fifth highest odds according to whatever odds site Basketball Reference uses in order. It starts with Boston, then the Knicks, then the Nuggets, then the Timberwolves. I don't think that OKC should be where they are on this list. I think that it's them and Boston as the two best teams in the NBA. Denver did not really get much better over this offseason. The Knicks, I do think that they are legitimate championship contenders. They are definitely within the top five. I just don't know if they're better than Oklahoma City is right now. And Minnesota, I think that they are, obviously a championship contender as well. But do I think they're going to beat Oklahoma City? I don't. I think that the Thunder are going to be the team representing the Western Conference in the playoffs. I do understand odds makers maybe giving Minnesota the benefit of the doubt because of how they performed last year and how they were better than Oklahoma City was in last year's playoff, which I totally understand. It's the same rationale that I use when discussing the reigning champion as the odds favorite to be the repeat champion because they deserve that respect. Additionally, you have them trading Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, one of, if not the best 3-and-D guards in the NBA today, can shoot 40% from three, can guard both backcourt positions and potentially even the wing positions, depending on how small the opposing team goes. Additionally, he does give them a little bit of a facilitator floor general. For Chicago last season, averaged 6 assists per 100 possessions. But I do think that the last hole that Oklahoma City should try to fill is finding some sort of traditional point guard, somebody like Kyle Lowry, somebody like Mike Conley, if for nothing else, when you get to the postseason and you need someone who can settle down and corral the offense when things get wacky, when shots aren't falling. That's not to say that there aren't great playmakers on this roster. Of course, SGA is on there, but you do sometimes need a calming presence at point guard to just, again, resettle the offense. We saw Mike Conley pay dividends for Minnesota all throughout of last year's playoffs. They looked worse offensively when he wasn't on the floor, and that is the byproduct of being a young, inexperienced team who doesn't know how to handle themselves under the added pressure of the postseason. Of course, Oklahoma City does have the talent to mitigate that. Not only do they have the talent, but they have a philosophy that everyone buys into and that everybody fits into exceptionally well. They were the 11th best assist team in the league last season, despite not having a quote unquote true point guard. And that's because they have multiple ball handlers who are capable of getting into the paint, driving, dishing, finishing. I'm, of course, not downplaying SGA as the primary facilitator as well. He is great for them in that role, but he is a score first. He is a score first two guard, which is fine. It worked out perfectly well for them last season, and I don't think that this quote unquote weakness is going to be that detrimental to them because they have such a terrific foundation on both ends of the ball. And it gets even stronger when you throw in Isaiah Hartenstein and when you throw in Alex Caruso. As I mentioned at the top, all of the other core guys are going to be much better this season. You retain Cason Wallace, you retain Isaiah Joe, two guys who were terrific for you when it came to floor spacing. And then on top of that, you have Mark Dagnall as well, who has another year of coaching under his belt. I did a video last August, I believe it was, talking about the team with the brightest future, and I settled on the Oklahoma City Thunder, and everything is being realized. I believe when I recorded that video, the biggest flaw I saw with them was something that you can't fix in an offseason with player additions, and that was inexperience. The more youthful a team is, the more likely it is that they don't fare well in the postseason. And OKC showed that despite their youth, despite their inexperience, their floor as a team was Western Conference finalist or borderline Western Conference finalist. They could have kept that same team from last year, and they probably would have fared as well or better because the West overall is not the force that it once was. Phoenix, their chances are running out. Denver got weaker this offseason. Minnesota is, of course, still a force. Dallas is still a force. I believe that they're going to be pretty much the same team as last season. But the West is more open now than it has been in recent seasons. I think that the Western Conference title is Oklahoma City's to lose this season. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. As always, everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. If you do any of those three things, you will become my new favorite person. And with that, I will see y'all in the next one.